2026. Welcome to our select board meeting. Our first agenda item is to move into executive session for two purposes. So I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, Purpose 6, for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically 26 Pleasant Street, and 2B, move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, Purpose 6, for the purpose of considering the value of real estate at the following properties: 15 Babcock Street, 12 to 24 Center Street, and 25 to 39 Center Street. And assuming we go into executive session, we will then come back into open session following our executive session for the rest of our meeting. Bernard? Yes. Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Recording stopped.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. We have returned from our executive session, and our next agenda item will be announcements and updates. Do any select board members have some announcements or upcoming events to disclose? Michael?
Yes, thank you. The first thing that I would like to announce, just to make sure that everybody is aware, that following up on a town meeting warrant article, the first version of the Renter's Handbook is now available on the town website. And I encourage all renters and landlords to look that up. The second thing that I would like to announce is the Select Board's 2030 roadmap has a goal and a set of actions around working with community groups and integrating with their work. So in the Select Board packet today, there are 3 announcements from the Brookline Community Mental Health Center about various activities that they're taking on for the community. There is a child and adolescent groups at the Brookline Center for Community Mental Health to help young people overcome challenges so that they can enjoy fuller lives and experience brighter futures. There is a program called Momentum Coaching, which provides personalized coaching for high school students. And thirdly, there is a parent support group for the summer of 2026, and the flyers for these are all in the Select Board packet, and more information is on their website.
All right. Amanda?
Yes, our last Select Board meeting, I had asked a question of the town clerk in need of poll workers, and I got a response that I wanted to share. We have a high need for poll workers at all elections. This September 1st election is an especially high need for poll workers for reasons of timing and logistics of the state primary and the state election.
Recording stopped.
At the same time.
Recording in progress.
Touch anything.
There's also one clarification. This is not a volunteer position. Poll workers are given a stipend for the day of work, receive training before Election Day, and are provided with breakfast and lunch on Election Day. If you are interested or know someone who is, email pollworker@brooklinema.gov.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. Anyone else? I will mention that next Tuesday, August 4th, is National Night Out, which is a nationwide community police awareness raising event held by police departments across the U.S. This year's event will be held at 599 Brookline Ave at Lynch Park from 5 to 8 p.m. Like last year, there will be a bounce house, bounce obstacle course, police canine demonstration, touch a truck, food, ice cream, carnival games, entertainment, and much more. Anyone else? All right, so with that, we will move to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Melanie, if you'd like to review the rules.
Sure. Thank you for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Once 15 minutes has been met, there is an opportunity at the conclusion of the Select Board's business for additional comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. The on-screen timer will flash orange when you have 60 seconds remaining and red when your time is nearly up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Any person wishing to speak must begin their comment by identifying themselves with their full name, either their Brookline precinct number or street address, and the specific topic on which they wish to speak. The board encourages but does not require that remote users turn their video on when commenting. First person to sign up is Ann Lusk.
All right. Ann, please come up.
started my time yet? Tell me when.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. Ann Lusk, Precinct 5, refinements to consider for the CIP-funded study for the Lars Anderson DPW yard and the land below. In January 8, 2024, Aaron Shute sent a letter to the Select Board members about Lars Anderson's Park DPW yard and moving. She said she had started to think about possible options. At the Select Board meeting on April 18th, 2026, Chaz Carey said that the DPW yard predates Article 97, but that maintenance is approved under Article 97. He has committed to using CIP funds to do a town-wide facility study because the stuff must go somewhere. We want to make it work. Chaz also said that he added the DPW site to the conservation and preservation study being done by Kyle Zick, so thank you. In July 16, 2026, Brookline News published a story about the pool at Lars Anderson Park. Aaron Shute was quoted as saying the maintenance yard remains essential to the town's operations. She listed maintenance on hundreds of parks and open spaces, the need for storing tractors, mowers, synthetic turf materials, trailers, snow removal equipment, playgrounds, etc. That would be for the entire town to have maintenance at Lars Anderson. In all of these discussions, though, no mention is ever made that Isabel Anderson's 1948 will predates the DPW moving to the yard and predates Article 97. All 64 acres were given to the residents for public recreation, conservation, and public education. A maintenance shed just for Lars Anderson exists beside the playground. Please consider the following. Though DPW is mentioned, other departments, including the police, who have 5 cars with no license plates on them, use the DPW yard for storage, and alternate space should be found for them, so find a place for the police department. The land below the walled garden should be included in the CIP-funded study because storage there includes Office of Emergency Management's 5 trailers, hauling trailers, school shuttle, 2 huge shipping containers. 3, the land below the walled garden could have gravel or stay mat with concrete bumpers and a center pull-in signs to help drivers understand the layout on a gravel lot. You can't paint lines on a gravel lot. Trees would be in and around the lot to create a climate-responsive parking room. At Lars Anderson, rooms were created in all of the spaces, including the walled garden and the Italianate garden. You want to see pages 64 to 68 in the Lars Anderson and Isabel's Wealth and Celebrity Age. If you want, I can send you the sections of those pages. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who's our next speaker?
We have Susan Park.
Good evening, everyone. Susan Park, town meeting member from Precinct 17. Good to see you all. I know you just met for executive session, and I don't know where you landed, but I came tonight to represent the 53 abutters and neighbors that signed a letter you received in your inbox yesterday morning. As stated in our letter, we are very concerned about the well-documented fact in the town and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council report that Coolidge Corner is an urban heat island with a concentration of impervious surfaces that absorb and retain heat. These factors will continue to lead to higher temperatures in Coolidge Corner compared to anywhere else in Brookline. North Brookline is documented to be below the national average for having open space, as mentioned in Economic Development Director Kara Bruton's workshop report on June 16. The consequences are significant, such as health risks, higher energy consumption, and diminished quality of life. The good news is that open spaces effectively reduce temperatures in urban areas, and they improve air quality and manage water runoff. With the Waldo Durgan site proposing a 10-story hotel with approximately 160 rooms, a 14-story residential building comprising around 132 units, and ground floor retail and restaurant spaces with underground parking. Creating more open space on 26 Pleasant can provide the essential cooling through shade and greenery to balance 292-unit project right next door. The 15 mature trees and vegetation will absorb sunlight and release moisture, filters pollutants, produces oxygen, helping to lower temperatures. we can create a natural buffer against the heat, making North Brookline more comfortable during the sweltering summer, like the heat wave we experienced this summer. And in June, we saw Spain's most intense heat wave on record. With Waldo Durgan's big development in the pipeline, we know Coolidge Corner's heat island will get worse, which results in more electricity used for air conditioning, as we are learning from our European neighbors in Spain and France, as they are having to use more electricity for air conditioning like never before. With higher temperatures, we see the exacerbation of air pollution, particularly ozone levels, leading to increased respiratory problems like asthma. More green spaces can significantly improve the air we breathe, which is crucial for our health, especially for vulnerable populations such as children and the elderly. A park at 26 Pleasant could reduce stress and improve mental health, providing space for relaxation, recreation, and community gatherings for Brookliners of all ages. They foster social interaction and create a sense of belonging, which is especially important in our fast-paced urban environment. And the fact is, right across from Coolidge Corner Library and next to the massive Waldo
Your time
Durgan
is up.
development is a golden opportunity. I hope you will consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker.
We have Al Davis online.
Thank you so much. Joni Mitchell wrote a song saying, take paradise and put up a parking lot. Developers think they're doing the opposite, taking a parking lot and building a paradise. I think the opposite is most likely true. Developers are taking advantage of liberal-leaning population by exploiting them for their own profit. I'm in favor of sensible increased housing, but not at the expense of destroying a neighborhood. Putting a third giant development at this location will be an environmental nightmare. Dysfunctioning traffic, dust, noise. Waldo is enough, plus the building across the street. I think North Brookline has become an overrun district, and it's very, very concerning. On the contrary, installing a beautiful park to complement the public library is brilliant and a fantastic and appropriate idea for city planning. Let's find a way to increase housing. Let's find a way to preserve neighborhoods. I just don't see the idea that we all live in this town because of its beauty, its parks, the way that we function. And just by trying to turn us into the seaport or something, by just putting up as many high rises as realtors are willing to develop, I think is a tragic mistake. Thank you.
All right. So our next speaker.
Martin Yassin.
Hello, I'm Martin Yassin, and I live at 25 John Street, and I have, which is one of the John Street townhouses that occupies one side of John Street, and I've lived there for 43 years, and I just wanted to say that I've talked to everybody in our side of this block, and the opposition to having yet another large structure built on the parking lot is very, very adamantly against. And I have to ask, I wonder, where is it that the rights of the people in this neighborhood, our health, our mental health, our physical health, where do those rights come in to when they're butting up against these multi-billion-dollar developers? Do we have rights at all? The idea that you have been discussing of putting a park there is a wonderful, wonderful idea. There is almost no green space in Coolidge Corner. And I might also point out that Coolidge Corner, at 26,000 population per mile, is one of the 5 densest urban areas in the state of Massachusetts. And we really need a little bit of relief. We really need some green space, and it would be a tremendous benefit to the children of the neighborhood, to the adults of the neighborhood, to the elderly in the neighborhood. You really could not do a greater good service to the people whom you represent by somehow figuring a way to deal with Nordblum and to make this property a public property that could be used by the people of this community, because there is very little space around and we're just kind of suffocating from all of the building. So I hope you can work something out. I just wanted to make that remark, and I commend you for your efforts, and I'm sure you will sincerely work toward doing something to make this wonderful idea an actuality. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's our next speaker?
We don't have anybody else
All
that's
right.
signed up previously.
Looks like we do have somebody who would like to come up and speak. All right, come up. Please identify yourself, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. I am Molly Sheepa, and I am a resident of Precinct 17 and live near the 26 Pleasant parking lot. And so I am here today to express my support for the idea of making 26 Pleasant a public open space. North Brookline is already densely developed and has been identified as a heat island area because of the concentration of buildings and concrete that absorbs the heat and retains it. And creating a park at 26 Pleasant would provide lasting environmental and community benefits, including shade, reduced heat, improved air quality, and just be a welcoming space for neighbors to gather. I am concerned about the proposed development at 26 Pleasant in combination with the Waldo Durgan project, as well as the 55-unit apartment complex behind Trader Joe's. I'm concerned that it will create lots of traffic and congestion and parking issues, and contribute to the heat island effect that we already have in place. So a park would be a permanent public asset that could serve residents of all ages. One idea for the park could be to grow a mini forest. So there are communities around the world that are planting pockets of mature trees to help manage the effects of climate change. And we have grown 2 mini forests in Brookline already, one at FRR school and then also one at the Brookline Avenue Park. And so that could, not take up the whole 26 Pleasant spot, but it would be a place for a mini forest. And so that in combination with just making it a open space would just make the neighborhood healthier, more resilient, and more livable for generations to come. So I do recognize the need for housing, but I do believe that responsible planning also requires planning for open space, especially in the town's most densely developed and heat-affected neighborhoods like North Brookline. And so I ask you to strongly consider making 26 Pleasant a public open space. So thank you.
All right, thank you. We generally allot 15 minutes for public comment at the beginning of a meeting. If anyone would like to offer additional public comment at the end of our meeting, you will have that opportunity. So with that, we will move to miscellaneous items. First up is 5A, question of approving the meeting minutes from July 14th, 2026. It does not appear that any revisions were made to those minutes, so I will go ahead and move approval of the minutes of July 14th. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Next, we will take up item 5B, which is the question of approving a citation of recognition and appreciation for Dr. Harold Peterson, who is gracing us with his presence this evening. Thank you for being here, sir. And Michael, I think you have something to read.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a proclamation from the Brookline Select Board. The Brookline Select Board is expressing its appreciation to Dr. Harold Peterson for his exemplary 37 years of service to the town of Brookline on the Board of Assessors. Whereas Dr. Harold Peterson has proudly concluded an extraordinary 37 years of dedicated service as a member of the Town of Brookline Board of Assessors, and whereas the vital work of the Board of Assessors is essential to the fair and effective operation of local government, ensuring that property assessments remain accurate, equitable, and consistent to support the schools, services, and community resources that residents rely on every day. And whereas, throughout his tenure, Dr. Peterson has consistently demonstrated the highest standards of professionalism, integrity, and unwavering commitment to the residents of our community. And whereas, his deep understanding of assessment practices, institutional knowledge, and expertise as a renowned economist have brought a unique and invaluable perspective to the Board of Assessors, allowing him to expertly analyze economic trends and market forces to enhance local decision-making and economic stability. And whereas Dr. Peterson's remarkable dedication has provided vital continuity through decades of change, reflecting the very best of public service through fairness, thoughtful analysis, and care. Now, therefore, in consideration of the foregoing, that the Select Board hereby extends its deepest gratitude and sincere appreciation to Dr. Harold Peterson for his lasting impact on the town of Brookline and the Board of Assessors. Signed, the Brookline Select Board. And may I also add, happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. So now let's make it official, and then we'll hear from you, okay? So I move approval of the citation of recognition and appreciation for Dr. Harold Peterson, as just read by Michael.
Would it be out of place for me to add some comments at this point?
No, not at all.
Okay. Dr. Peterson, I hope you don't mind me telling people about a different aspect of your incredible contributions to Brookline. In your 2018 book, 56 Years, Two Journeys, mainly about your time at Boston College, you talk about how you and a small group of individuals and churches took intentional steps to racially integrate Brookline by establishing the Foundation for Brookline Housing and acquiring housing that they initially would rent and later sell to black families who face housing discrimination in Brookline. Their first house purchased by what was become the Foundation for Brookline Housing was rented to a black professor at Boston College who, like you, wanted to move from Brighton to Brookline for the schools. The house unfortunately had an existing tenant who was a town activist who you had to evict because of his hostility to a black family living in his building. So we talk a lot about affordable housing, but we need to also continue to talk about racial integration that includes middle-class black families, among others. And you did something more than just talk. And personally, I thank you for that. I think the town should thank you for that work many, many years ago.
Thank you for providing that additional history for us. Now why don't we complete the vote?
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, Dr. Peterson, you wanted to come up and give some remarks?
Wow. I didn't even know I died. I have such nice things said about me. But seriously, I'm blown away. I can't imagine why you've done this, since there's so many others far more worthy of recognition, unless it's a reward for my stepping aside. Or because it happens to be my birthday. And you even knew that? Wow. Now, seriously, this recognition should have been given To the chief assessors and staff with whom I worked for all of these years, they are the ones who kept things going, and I accept this on behalf of all of them. I would like to express to the members of the Select Board how very grateful I am for the service they give to our beloved town of Brookline. When I think of the hours you put in with very little reward, save for your own sense of satisfaction for what you're doing, I am constantly amazed. We should say thank you more often. I do leave you with a warning. I'd been a political activist prior to going on the Board of Assessors. But once there, I tried very hard to put that aside. I did not endorse any candidates for election in Brookline, and I did not openly give my views on important issues. My warning is that now I may once again be very vocal on controversial issues when I believe I have some solid evidence to back up my views. You will be hearing from me.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will move to item 5C and then probably take the rest of the items in omnibus fashion unless another member wants to remove something.
I'd like to pull out 5F and 5H.
5F and 5H, okay. And Amanda, do you have an item?
5C, so.
Okay. So item 5C is the question of accepting 2 partial fiscal year 2027 grant awards from the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health Jail Arrest Diversion Program, totaling $82,000 to support the continuation of 2 important behavioral health initiatives within the Brookline Police Department. The awards consist of $64,000 for the Norfolk County Crisis Intervention Training and Technical Assistance, and $18,000 for the department's co-response jail arrest diversion program. We have some representatives from our Brookline Police Department and also Chief Pastor, excuse me, I'm just noticing you here. If one of you or all of you might want to come up and just explain to us about the diversion program, these financial awards, and what they will facilitate.
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you for having me here. Jen Pastor, Chief of Police. I'm always happy to come in and talk about any of our programs, particularly when they pertain to mental health and crisis response, because I think we've been seen across the state as a role model in how police departments can respond to individuals in crisis. So as you see there, and you mentioned, we have 2 different grants that are up for renewal. The first is the Norfolk County TTAC grant. Brookline Police established our crisis intervention team back in 2012. And at that time, the few of us that were trained had to go off-site to different departments to try to find training. In 2016, so a decade ago, the Department of Mental Health selected Brookline to become the Regional Training and Technical Assistance Center for Norfolk County. We say Norfolk County, but at that time it included Boston, some South Shore communities, and even some Metro West communities. So our center is funded through DMH grants, not our tax dollars. We're one of the state's leading resources for crisis intervention training. We provide the nationally recognized 40-hour crisis intervention team course, along with numerous advanced additional trainings throughout the year to police officers, dispatchers, clinicians, and other public safety professionals from across the state. The goal with that is straightforward: to just better prepare first responders to recognize signs and symptoms of mental illness, substance use disorders, developmental disabilities, people who are, exhibiting signs of a trauma response, and any other behavioral health issues that lead them to come into contact with the members of our department. We try to guide officers to use effective communication, to de-escalate situations whenever possible, and to connect people with appropriate services rather than solely relying on law enforcement or punitive actions. While the national CIT model recommends training about 20 to 25% of an agency, Brookline has gone much further, and 100% of our department is trained in this 40-hour model. This philosophy is part of our organizational culture rather than just a specialty assignment. So the second initiative that you see there is the co-response model. That's the officers who are here in the back of the room. So our new clinician, our shiny new clinician that was hired at the end of May is Leah Dufour. And she's assigned on an impact shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. with the members of our evening community service division. I have with me Officer Liz Wagner, and Officer Oscar Santos. Officer Tim Stevenson is the third sworn member of that division. So rather than focusing on training, this program places Leah in a marked police car with one of our officers, and they go out and handle calls in real time. So Leah's been responding in the field since June. Just to give a picture of what that looks like, since June, she's responded to nearly 50 incidents. They include psychiatric crises, suicide-related calls, well-being checks, and a lot of follow-up contacts with residents and families. She provides on-scene assessments, helps develop safety plans, and connects people with treatment and community resources. And often continues working with individuals long after the police response has ended. So the two programs are designed to complement one another. CIT ensures that every police officer has the skills to safely and compassionately respond to behavioral health crises. The co-response program adds the expertise of Leah when additional clinical interventions are appropriate.
All right, thank you very much for that very thorough explanation of both grants. Any questions from board members? Any comments? All right, well then I move that we accept the two partial fiscal year 2027 grant awards from the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health Jail Arrest Diversion Program and the department's co-response jail arrest diversion program. Bernard,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. All right, with that, we had a request to take up 5F separately. So 5F is the question of...
5H.
And 5H. So with 5F, question of accepting a FY25 emergency management performance grant from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency in the amount of $23,040 to enable the Office of Emergency Management to purchase security equipment for the Emergency Operations Center. So Bernard, do you have a specific question regarding
I
it?
do. These are great this money is used for really great programs and equipment. My concern, though, is that, as everyone knows, this administration is imposing on its grants certain conditions with respect to immigration, with respect to DEI and other matters that are, in my opinion, unacceptable. I raise this question because the federal articles of agreement for this contract were not in the packet, and I got it later on. And Town Council has said that two of the conditions, number 11 and number 55, in a list of conditions, are not a problem because of a court case in Rhode Island. However, there are other paragraphs to these conditions that are really problematic. Mainly a definition of DEI that is defined in an executive order and that requires that any recipient not have any programs that promote DEI or what they call discriminatory equity ideology. So my question is just to get assurance that we have that we have taken steps to ensure that we're not going to be subject to those provisions, even though it seems that the court case in Rhode Island doesn't cover all of the paragraphs of the agreement.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for the question. It is, and it's always worth looking through these and making sure that we are aware of where all these court cases are. You can actually see towards the end of that document, there's a bunch of hastily added paragraphs that say, by the way, all of these are canceled because we've lost a bunch of court cases about them. That particular instance about the DEI language, what we have always said in response to that is we are in compliance with the policies and programs of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act on all of these. And when you read the description of what they consider to be DEI, and you realize that because of the constraints placed on them by the actual federal law, they're not. We are not required to buy into their definition of DEI or any of those things, just merely by signing this. We are not using any money in this grant for any of the purposes that any of the end purposes that they seem to be concerned about. And we don't ask for money to deal with our efforts to maintain a diverse and fair community from this federal government. They are not able to and should not be able to come to the town of Brookline and say, hey, just because you say you like to be a diverse community, that you're not allowed to have these grants. You made a material misstatement when you signed these grants. None of that is applicable here. When they first started putting that language in, we looked at it and we said very clearly, is this something that applies to this particular thing that we were asking for? For if we were applying for a program that conferred, that had a mission statement of, providing increased equity and so forth, then I would want to take a hard look at how that executive order intersects with it. But that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we're buying cameras and desks and shelter equipment for emergency management. So there's no implication here with this grant about their DEI stuff and their definition of DEI, and nothing in this document requires us to accept their definition of DEI, which, to be clear, we do not.
Right. My only concern is that we're monitoring this very carefully because the language in paragraph 18 is very broad.
Yes.
It says recipients are certifying that they do not and will not, during the term of this financial assistance award, operate any programs that advance or promote DEI, et cetera.
Yep.
So, I mean, we can't resolve this right now. I just want to make sure that we are constantly monitoring this and making sure that we're not going to be trapped into some of the behaviors of the federal government around these grants.
Yeah. We don't believe that they are, right. Comply with all, so you read the top of it. Recipients must comply with all applicable federal anti-discrimination laws material to the government's payment decisions, which we take to mean for the purposes of this grant. None of these apply for the purposes of this grant. For example, right, we're talking about security cameras for the Emergency Operations Center because we're replacing the ones that have outlived their useful life. None of this applies to that. We're not running equity programs with security cameras. And if we were to be, and so this is very careful not to attach conditions to a grant that are broader than the terms of the grant itself. The federal government can't force us to do unrelated things for the condition of the grant in order for us to accept the grant. So they can't force us to, swear an oath that we're not going to do any sort of diversity-related work to accept a grant for security cameras. That's beyond the ambit of the grant agreement. So it is a good question, and it's good to look into. But I do, this is something we watch very carefully because, as we've said before, right, we are not going to sleepwalk into agreeing to these conditions that the federal government is placing on us.
Yeah, I hope the public knows or sees how difficult it is to work within this current environment. And I think that you've committed that if we can't avoid these conditions, we'll just give up the money.
That's right.
Which is going to cost us, but is more important than.
That's right.
It's important to maintain some integrity in our town.
Yeah, and I think you on the select board have done a really good job with this. Even in right when the election happened, the 2024 election happened, we had these conversations with you. You've always been clear with us. You've given us clear guidance, and we are following your guidance on this. So we appreciate that you were ready and reactive and proactive in thinking about where these lines are and how we can be set where if we need to make hard choices in the face of a hostile federal government, we can. So thank you.
All right, any further comment or questions on item 5F? All right, then I move that we accept a FY25 Emergency Management Performance Grant from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency in the amount of $23,040 to enable the Office of Emergency Management to purchase security equipment for the Emergency Operations Center. Bernard?
By the way, 5H also was one I went, but they're basically the same issue.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we can do both of them together.
All right, so you want to do both 5F and 5H? Okay, so amended question. I move approval of 5F and 5H. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. And that now leaves items 5D, 5E, 5G, and 5I through 5Y.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Amanda.
5Q, what is an open air parking license?
Good question. We require licenses for open air parking. The fire department has to review them for fuel storage and safety in terms of, in case of car fires and so forth, and the police department reviews them as well.
These are like assigned parking spaces
These
outside.
these are private lots. Private
Thank
lots in Brookline are licensed by the town. So yes, the fire department, the police department, the building department.
And I just wanted to make one comment on 5O. The question of approving an increase in rental days from 90 days per year to a maximum of 180 days for a short-term rental located at 129 Addington Road in Brookline. I believe this is in response to a bylaw requirement with regard to short-term rentals, and since the short-term rental bylaw was implemented by town meeting, my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is the first time that we've had such an approval come before us, and we are looking forward to granting this approval. And I just want to express my appreciation to the applicant for following the process and bringing the question before the select board per the town's bylaw. So thank you.
All right, so with that, we go back to the vote. Moving approval of 5D, 5E, 5G, and items 5I through 5Y.
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. With that, we will move on to our next agenda item, Boards and Commissions interviews, Parks and Recreation Commission. We have 2 candidates to interview this evening, and as usual, we will ask how many spots are available and how many applicants do we have?
Okay, so for parks, we have one pending opening, and one person is not seeking reappointment, so that will be a potential second one. We do have 2 current applicants for this, but we did have somebody stop by our office this evening. Priscilla stopped by. She said she tried to apply online. Her application didn't go through, so she will also be applying. So you'll have a future applicant for that.
All right, so first up, we have Jess Levasseur.
She is online.
All right. And what we will be doing now to try to be fair to all of our candidates is asking that they contain their introductory remarks to 3 minutes.
Do you want me to time
Or just roughly monitor it. It's a soft 3 minutes, but to give an idea as to what we're expecting for your introductory remarks, it can certainly be less. All right, whenever you are ready, Ms. Levasseur.
All right. Hi, I'm Jess Levasseur. I'm a new town meeting member from Precinct 9. I'm also a mother of 3. I have 3 children who utilize the parks, ages 6, 8, and 19. I myself use I play the adult soccer for the rec league. I'm a public school teacher in Newton. I do track coaching in the spring. I'm one of the assistant coaches. I am very involved in my community there. Through the school, I attend a lot of the events. I'm one of the ski club chaperones. When I go, I'm the fall and winter. I'm the faculty advisor for math counts, and I've coached soccer previously. My youngest is finally following in my footsteps and being interested in soccer. So I'm going to be a soccer parent again. I might look into coaching for her. I haven't submitted that yet, but not sure what else I should say for the introduction.
That's fine. Any questions from board members? Amanda?
Sure. I know we have currently some very passionate voices on passive open space on the Parks and Rec Commission, and I am definitely interested in hearing voices that are in touch with recreation needs. And so I'm wondering what you think are some of the biggest recreation needs that the town is facing.
Well, I think honestly, I'm an active parent in Brookline Kids Unplugged, and one of the things that gets shared a lot in the conversation there, what are ways that kids and adults can connect as a community? Because community is one of the biggest ways we can keep our kids off devices right now. And so I think like the movies in the parks type of events, like sports, obviously. But as I know from my two older kids, not all kids are into sports. So a lot of the community events that I've seen offered in the parks, like I think like just some families are looking for ways to connect with others, like other age groups. So it could be kids, it could be adults, it could be teenagers, but have something that maybe connects them. So even just like pick up leagues, not always something that requires a commitment like sports teams do. But something like some towns have things like it could be like volleyball pickup hour and there are nets set up and this is a good time and it would be like something recurring. So like things like that, I guess.
Bernard?
So you teach in Newton and also coach in Newton. So we always like to learn from our neighbors. Is there anything that Newton does with respect to parks and open space that maybe we should consider or can teach us something?
I feel like
from
that's
your
something.
perspective?
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the entire town. I am coaching as part of the school, so I'm familiar with the school fields, I guess. Um, that's something that there's a lot of sharing between the high school tracks with the middle schools. That's my experience, I guess, is having that opportunity for the sharing, and the town manages, like, there is a coordinator for the coaching on the coaching side who does coordinate the use of the fields, and it's probably a lot of scheduling. But
Oh, sorry. I had a similar question to Bernard. I saw that you had a 4-year coaching stint in Naperville, Illinois, and I'm just curious what maybe you learned about Naperville's practices that would help inform you on parks and recreation here in Brookline.
one thing that I'm not sure, because I haven't coached in Brookline yet, so I don't know if this is already something that's done, but before I was able to coach in Naperville, they had there's a whole binder training. They had all the coaches come in to one of the indoor fields, and we had a morning like seminar kind of. We were coached into coaching before we did. So we were by sports, like whatever we were coaching. So I was with the soccer group. And so they went over the equipment and they went over the binders and what should practice look like, what kind of activities. There was a question, like a Q&A session. And so it was very involved with the coaches before they had us coach. I'm not sure if that's something Brookline currently does. As I said, I'm not yet coaching in Brookline.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for the interview. We have some other candidates to interview as well, and we will get back to you eventually.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, our next candidate is Sarah Pagliaccio.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Sarah Pagliaccio. Thanks, David, you got that just right.
Could you talk into the mic?
Sorry, Bernard, I thought I was. Can I start over? Still get my 3 minutes? Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah Pagliaccio. I am a longtime Brookline resident. I've lived here for most of the last 28 years, because I love the trees. I think like a lot of the schools in the trees are big draws around our neighborhoods. Professionally, I teach at Bentley. I'm a career consultant in experience design. I'm now also full-time faculty and running the consulting team at Bentley University, where I focus both my teaching and my consulting on creating accessible, inclusive systems thinking approaches to design thinking and human experiences, both human to human and human to device, and increasingly human to environment kind of experiences is how I approach my design practice, and again, my teaching to my students. On a personal level, I am also a mother to 3 boys. The 2 older kids are grown now, 22 and 20, although when they come home, they still like to hang out with their little brother, who's 10. We've been big users of the parks, almost all. I think we've hit almost all the parks in the last 10 years through rec programs, pickup games, Brookline Sunday soccer at Downs and at Driscoll. Sam went to Sewell, did Sewell during the school year and Sewell summer. He did a bunch of the rec programs there at the gym next to Sewell as well. He's played soccer and baseball, so we've been everywhere around town. I also do a lot of volunteering at Lincoln, where all 3 of my kids have gone, where Sam still goes. And I'm a part of the PTO. I'm the room parent coordinator. I'm the co-chair of the garden program, the green team there, and recently was invited to become part of the site council at Lincoln. Some of you might also already know me as the lady who sends all those emails about getting the new Lincoln Grounds CIP program into the budget, which the Lincoln community thanks you all very much for your support of our CIP program. So I'm sure that was more than 3 minutes. Thank you for being forgiving. What questions can I answer for you?
All right, who has some questions? Go ahead, Amanda.
I actually have 2. One is a repeat from before. What do you think are sort of the biggest recreational needs in the town?
Yeah, I mean, I think first I have to say that I think we're already doing quite a good job meeting a lot of diverse needs around town, which is exciting. But I also know in my own experience and other families' experiences, sometimes getting locked out of some of those intro programs, especially for the littles, right? We're really space limited in that small gym next to Sewell. Some of those indoor programs, the like learn how to play basketball, learn how to play taekwondo, like don't even get me started on the learn to swim program, right? That one gets filled up in 5 seconds after it opens. So I do think that we could meet a higher demand, but I know some of that is also space limited, so that probably requires bigger conversations. I know there are ongoing conversations about creating a site for a new outdoor pool. I'm really interested in seeing what the feasibility study comes back with in regards to the pool. It would be great if we could find a site in North Brookline. I think, I've lived in every neighborhood in Brookline in all these years. I feel like that's probably pretty limited options there, finding a site in North Brookline. I would just want to make sure that it's accessible and fair, that people can get there, that we can park there, right? That it's open and available, and we're not creating a new problem. But we solve the pool problem, but maybe create a transportation problem. But I do think that we could be probably serving a few more communities. We could probably be serving seniors better also. I understand that the space, I haven't been in it myself, but I understand the space at the senior center is pretty small. The complaints that the gym gets crowded, things like that. So if there were some creative things we could do to create some more space, I think we would meet a higher demand.
Then my second question, because you touched on accessibility, which is a cause near and dear to my heart. What do you think we can be doing to increase accessibility of our parks and open spaces around town?
Yeah, so I love that as we've been redoing some of the parks, right, that sort of round robin of the parks getting renewed in adjacent to the new schools, but also, right, Robinson, Downs, the Cypress Field playground. Those have all been done, I think, in the last 10 years now, certainly since we moved into the neighborhood. I love that those like accessible pathways are already being created around those parks. I would love to see some of the older parks be sort of retrofitted with more accessible pathways, easy access, better gate systems, right? And not putting gates in the fences where we don't need to, right? Flat pathways that people can circumnavigate the parks. Certainly, I know the wood chips are like, I personally, like I have mixed feelings about, I love the wood chips because it's natural material, but it's also messy and hard to maintain and not accessible. Wherever we can find some kind of compromise that are actually accessible solutions, right? But that we're not dumping petroleum in our parks. I'm all in favor of those things. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I hope I'm answering your question.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amanda.
So a question I have for you, you mentioned in your application that you followed closely the development of Downsfield, Cypress, and Robinson.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on what you see as the positives of those three, maybe any drawbacks that disappointed you,
Yeah.
and how that would inform your thinking if you join Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I think those are good questions, and I think, and I'm trying to get more and more familiar with parks outside of those that are also right in my neighborhood, right? So, because I'm in Precinct 5, those are the parks that we also go to the most, right, and spend the most time at. At the Cypress Playground, I actually love the way the park, the play structures themselves were like built right into the landscape, right? The way the hill was accommodated with the stonework that the kids can climb on. I think I wish we could have been able to afford in the budget more mature trees or faster growing trees that we planted along Cypress there, right? The top of that hill along the sidewalk is still pretty hot, right? So that would be sort of a pro and a con there. The splash pad is fantastic, though, and the play structure itself is just awesome for kids of all ages to learn and grow. Robinson had its own kind of unique needs, and I think that this is wonderful, too, that we do our best to try to meet the needs of the neighborhood. Robinson really addresses the needs of lots of different ages of kids, right? There are even just like different levels of swings that are set out in different areas. They're sort of designed to be for like the really little kids, the slightly bigger kids, and then the middle school age kids, while allowing also for hardscape there. I'm not sure I really have any complaints about Robinson. It's just like a mom complaint that when the mulberries start to fall, then, like the kids come home dirty, right, and with hands full of mulberries. Down at Downs, I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I like the playground. I worry that and maybe this is just me, but that the playground at the end that's closest to Pond Avenue almost feels a little too kiddie-ish. We're not accommodating all age groups. That strictly now feels like a tot lot, right? And I know that, there's plenty of room for the kids to do other things, but that like the kind of jungle gym stuff that we put at the other end, the obstacle course stuff, doesn't get utilized very much. And then the underneath it's turf underneath. It's artificial turf underneath there. It gets really dirty, and I don't know that there's a good way to clean that up more consistently. I know they come and they use that machine to clean the artificial turf in the middle of Downs, right in the center of the track, the football field area, right, the playing field area. I don't ever see, but maybe it's just the timing of when I'm there, I don't ever see anybody going in and like cleaning up the artificial turf under that obstacle course area. And it's just yucky, right? Like nothing biodegrades there like it would into natural turf. So I do think, and I still miss, it's so funny, my kids are way beyond that little kid phase. I do kind of still miss the sand pit under the tree. But I also understand the concerns about having just an open pit of sand in our playgrounds. Was probably environmentally and health-wise not a great idea.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, we do have another candidate, at least one other candidate that we will be interviewing, so we will get back to you, but thank you very much.
Great. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Can I ask ask one quick question? Not of you, sorry, just generally. I noticed we currently have an associate member on Parks
Yes.
and Rec. So is that one of the commissions that we can add associates but not alternate members?
I believe so. I'll double check. Parks and Rec is a statutory body. It's a creature of bylaws, so I'll check the bylaws.
All right. So next we will move to interviews of candidates for the Board of Assessors. And first up is Nicholas Araniello.
Can we also, in this case, get the number of openings and the number of candidates?
With Harold's resignation, there's one opening and one candidate.
Thank you.
I will note as well, the Board of Assessors is a little different than other committees that you appoint for a number of reasons. One, like some of the other boards, it requires a level of professional expertise. Two, it is a paid position. There's a stipend involved. It's not a full-time job, but there is a paid stipend involved in it. And three, you do not need to be a resident of the town of Brookline to be a member of the Board of Assessors. So I just want to make sure that all that information is before you.
All right, thank you. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Nicholas Araniello, and I'm here to express my candidacy for the position on the Board of Assessors. I'll give you some brief background. So I have a bachelor's in business administration from the Eisenberg School of Management, UMass Amherst, and then I have a law degree from George Washington University Law School. And I spent the last 20 years working for the Board of Assessors for the city of Boston. The first 12 years of that, I was counsel for the department. And so my responsibilities included dealing with a number of abatement applications, appeals, working on legislation, and working on contracts for tax agreements. And then for a year, I was director of tax policy. And then for the past 7 years, I was the commissioner of assessing. And in Boston, the setup is a little different from some other communities. But in essence, due to the city charter and the way state law works, the commissioner of assessing is a one-person board. So I was, in essence, the entire board of assessors for the city of Boston for the past 7 years. So I have some familiarity with responsibilities of the board, various duties related to tax valuation, dealing with abatements, dealing with appeals. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I don't want to go too far afield.
All right, any questions? Bernard?
Well, as the town administrator stated, you don't have to live in Brookline. I assume you don't.
I do not.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. What is it, and the Boston assessor's office is a lot different than ours. What is it you know about Brookline that we should know that you know to be able to step into this position quickly?
No, I appreciate that. It's a really good question. I do have some familiarity with Brookline, but I don't know like property by property level detail. I think you'll find actually that in general, assessing responsibilities in Massachusetts are very similar from community to community. You guys have a lot of these same property types that we have in Boston that we're dealing with modeling for. It's just smaller. But you have single families, two families, apartment buildings, you have hotels, you have commercial office space, you have retail space. These are all things that require different valuation approaches in modeling. We've also, in particular, Brookline and Boston have worked very closely, at least during my time working for the city. So I worked closely with your current chief assessor, Ted Costigan. I worked with his predecessors, Rashid and Gary. We worked on a number of appeals together, dealing with personal property utilities, issues that end up impacting the whole state, but that Boston and Brookline tend to lead, honestly, and then the benefits of those decisions help out the rest of the state as well. But to get back to your point, a lot of really what a board of assessors does is to make sure that the system is being implemented fairly and that values are going out at 100% fair market value so that, one, you can get state certification, but also just to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share. And then it's also the assessor's responsibility and the office's responsibility to be available to constituents and make sure that they understand how the system works, understand basically no one really likes taxes, but at the same point they serve a purpose, and you want to make sure that everyone is paying what is appropriate within our system, and that those rules and requirements and restrictions, they're the same throughout Massachusetts since we're all operating with the same system of laws.
Any other questions, Michael?
Yes. Thank you very much for your application. I'm curious whether in your role in Boston, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think this is part of the role of the Board of Assessors in Brookline, but if you had any input or feedback on the policy decisions of, in our case, the Select Board or other bodies that, determined rates or, set, in our case, residential exemptions, or how your work interacted with those decision processes?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So yeah, one of my responsibilities throughout the years was to explain our system of laws to both people within the city government, so the Commissioner of Assessing at the time, the CFO, the mayor, and then also to appear before our city council and to explain the systems that we have and then help advise on potential changes or new systems. So I worked on legislation that changed residential exemption requirements. I worked on legislation that changed senior exemption requirements. I've been in a number of meetings trying to figure out ways to kind of work within the system that we have and to get things through the state legislature. I've appeared before the state legislature and testified on a few different occasions to advance positions that the city was advocating for in relation to tax legislation. So I touched on a bunch of different aspects.
Thank you.
What is your approach to community engagement and dispute resolution, specifically if you have residents who feel that their valuations are inaccurate or inequitable?
That is a great question, and I really do feel that I think some of this ends up falling, I'll talk based on my experience and kind of what I felt was in Boston. I think some of it ends up falling a little bit more on the staff in the assessing department that have to be there day in, day out and deal with taxpayers. And but I was viewed in Boston that there's really, the overall objective is to properly value the city. But then there's also this kind of like sub-objective that was really kind of on equal level, which is be able to explain the system to our constituents and make sure that people kind of understood where their values were coming from and why. And so we did an immense amount of work to have lots of information available to people, not only in being responsive if they filed for an abatement and had questions about their value, but also putting information up on our website so you can get all kinds of sales data, all kinds of maps and transactions to kind of see what's happening in your neighborhood and get a sense of where other people are in relation to you. People don't own property for a couple of months. So anyone that has a question about their property tax bill, if you can't help them with that question, they're not going to go away. They're going to have that same question the year after, the year after, the year after. And so the more that, I think the bulk really does fall on the staff of the assessing department in the community, because they're the ones that are there 9 to 5 and have to deal with people when they come in unexpectedly. But the more you can explain that process and kind of figure out a way to get to understanding, people might not be happy about it, because again, nobody's particularly happy about taxes, but at least they understand they're being treated fairly and that you're working to help them kind of understand the parameters and how the system is set up.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, you had a question?
Yeah, just one. Why Brookline? Why are you applying for this position in Brookline?
Yeah, it's a great question. Part of it's timing. I ended my position with the city of Boston at the end of the fiscal year, so the end of June, and I'm thinking about kind of what I want to do next, taking a bit of a break for myself. I happened to hear from Ted that the position was going to be available, and I thought it might be a nice way for me to continue to help out in government while I figure out what my next steps might be. It's not so time consuming that I wouldn't be able to continue to do it while I work somewhere else when I figure out what that might be. But at the same point, it gives me an opportunity to get back to a community and state that I deeply love.
Thank you.
All right, so we may have more candidates, we may not, but at some point we will get back to you. So thank you very much for your interview.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
So next, we will be interviewing a candidate for Advisory Council on Public Health. The usual question, how many spots available, how many candidates?
Currently 2 vacancies. We have 4 applicants.
All right, thank you.
I will answer Amanda's earlier question. Yes, because Parks and Rec is statutorily limited to 7 members, so you can appoint associate members who are basically ex officio, don't vote, can't serve as alternates, they don't have voting privileges, but they can be, you can basically ask them to be a part of the discussion and the board accepts them on that basis, but you can't name alternates.
Thank you.
All right, so our candidate for this evening for Advisory Council on Public Health, Jessica Mickelson.
She's online.
All right, Ms. Mickelson, whenever you're ready.
Hi. Thank you for, oh, sorry, I'm not used to seeing my speech come up. Okay, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And sorry, I'm just having a weird Zoom issue. Apologies. Oh, never mind.
You're coming across to us very well. So.
Okay, I can just see myself multiple times and I can't see you.
Oh, we see you once.
Well, that's good. All right. Okay. I will just not worry about it. So I'm Jess Michelson. I live in Precinct 15. I've been in Brookline for nearly 2 years. And I'm applying to join the Advisory Council on Public Health because I want to use my skills to contribute to my new community and my new town, I guess. And my kind of professional expertise is in health policy and government policy. So I've spent the last decade in senior roles in the British government, in policy and administrative roles. I was the senior administrator for community-based healthcare sectors, which is a very broad remit in the UK, covering everything from community hospitals, home and community-based care, end-of-life care, social prescribing, and more. About 300,000 National Health Service staff work in community-based healthcare sectors. And in that role, I also led the British government's COVID-19 response across community-based healthcare sectors. And I would say I was particularly proud that we kept all the sectors functioning, staff didn't lose their jobs, patient care continued even while we adapted to COVID response. And I guess I think the relevance of this for my ability to contribute on the Advisory Council of Public Health is that I've got a lot of experience in leading health policy in really complex political environments and faced with various crises and emergencies. And I think that the town, public health everywhere is currently facing just multiple challenges and threats. And I would like to contribute to that or to addressing those. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Michael?
So thank you very much for your application. Given your extensive work in the British healthcare system and now being in the United States for a couple of years, so the balanced way to ask these questions, are there aspects of the public health regime within Brookline, Massachusetts, and the United States that could benefit from experiences that you've had with the British healthcare system?
I think so. One of my observations would be that the problems that we face, I think, are really similar, even though the systems, as you say, are so different. So I guess one example, thinking from a community perspective, is because the UK government and the National Health System is responsible for acute care and for care in the community, the kind of transition from hospital back into the community can be smoother, just because it's all one body. For example, I think there are other things that, and that isn't just a Brookline issue, that's a wider issue. I think there are other things that the UK can learn from Brookline as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed in your application materials, you mentioned that you led the UK COVID-19 pandemic response across community-based healthcare sectors. If you could describe how that experience would inform your service on the Advisory Council on Public Health?
Sure. I think thinking back to that time, I think for me, a big part of it was facing challenges, not that I had never faced before, but that no one I was working with had faced before. And the ministers and the politicians hadn't, clinical leaders hadn't. I mean, we were very much kind of in an unknown. And so I really had to change my style of working to adapt to that environment, as well as just new kind of issues arising regularly. And it feels to me like there is a lot of relevance now, some of the issues that public health is facing with the wider political context and the challenges at a federal level, as well as things like misinformation and the impacts that has on trust, for example. So I think there is a lot of relevance in facing kind of new challenges that you have to just think about that require thinking about in a new way, because no one has really come across them before. Did that make sense as an answer?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Amanda?
I noticed that you mentioned your experience and educational experience in conflict management, and would love to get your take on how that might be beneficial to navigating public health at the local level.
I think I would say it's all about the kind of hearts and minds side of public health. So thinking about my experience in conflict management was very much about how do we take people who have different perspectives and find a way to work toward a shared goal? Or how do we navigate differences but come out with something that benefits the community, or in this case, the world, the country, whatever level you're doing it. But I think it really comes down to the people. So I think it's just the ability to kind of step back, listen, and think about how do we come together with a shared goal. Maybe that means not everyone gets exactly what they want, or maybe that means we take a completely different route, but kind of everyone benefits, would be my yeah.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, we will have other candidates possibly who we will interview, and we will get back to you. But thank you for applying and for your interview.
Thanks.
All right, so that concludes our interviews for the evening for various boards and commissions. We will now move on to our next agenda item, the Washington Square Brookline Village Parking Studies presentation.
Commissioner Shute is online.
Good evening. Let me just get my video on here. Great. My name's Erin Chute. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works. Before turning the presentation over to our consultants, I'd like to briefly place tonight's discussion in context. The Washington Street Complete Street project is a comprehensive reconstruction of approximately 1.3 miles of Washington Street from Washington Square through Brookline Village to Route 9. It provides major improvements to accessibility, pedestrian and bike safety, transit, traffic operations, signals, drainage, lighting, landscaping, and the overall streetscape. This is a Mass DOT Transportation Improvement Project, or TIP. The current estimated construction cost is approximately $34.8 million, with construction programmed for federal fiscal year 2030. The town is responsible for advancing and funding design, while construction is expected to be funded substantially through the federal and state TIP program. So following extensive public review, the Design Review Committee advanced the preferred design in January 2025, followed by unanimous support of the Transportation Board. And then on February 11th, 2025, the Select Board voted to approve the preferred design and advance it to Mass DOT. And the board then also voted to request improved wayfinding and a parking and curb use study for both Brookline Village and Washington Square as part of the project planning. So since then, the town has submitted the 25% design to Mass DOT and worked through the agency's review comments. We're now finalizing that design and preparing for the formal Mass DOT public hearing this fall, after which we'll begin advancing to the 75% design. So this has been a truly collaborative effort. I want to recognize our partnership with the Planning and Community Development Department, including Jessica DeRoy, who's attending this evening, along with Dan Martin, DPW Sustainability Transportation Engineer, who's available to answer any questions. They're both attending in person. And so in response to the Select Board's direction, the town retained Stantec to conduct the parking and curb use studies. Tonight is an informational update. No board action is required. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Liza Cohen from Stantec. She'll present the study's purpose, approach, community engagement, findings, and recommendations. So that I will turn it over to Liza. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to share a screen. I've got some slides for you all. All right, is that working? Full screen?
There we go.
Great. Okay, thank you. Sorry, some slow internet here. So as Commissioner Chute mentioned, Stantec has been working for the last 14 months or so on a parking management study for both Brookline Village and Washington Square. Tonight, I'm going to provide a very brief update on where we are with those studies so that you all have the information at hand and can hear a bit about what we are recommending for both of those areas. So as I mentioned, this is about a 14-month process, began in the spring of last year, and we are at the little "We Are Here" section where we've submitted a final report and are wrapping things up. And as Commissioner Chute mentioned, the studies and have sort of mirrored or followed some of the Washington Street project milestones. And we most recently presented at the Transportation Board. We've also done some other engagement opportunities that I'll talk about here in a bit. So these are our study areas. You can see Washington Square on the western side of the map and Brookline Village on the eastern, with the Washington Street Complete Streets project bounds running between them. And one thing that's really important to recognize is that the town has done a lot of work that these studies needed to both fit into and build off of, much of it to help people travel by modes other than driving. So actually, a couple of folks on some of our focus groups recently made the point that a lot of that work is actually going to reduce parking crunches in and of itself, which is important to recognize. We also were able to develop study goals from a lot of this and draw on a lot of this work that the community has done to look at the town as a whole and these study areas. So key components of both studies, we're still talking with people. We did this through 2 phases in a variety of outreach points. We had some focus groups. At one point, we stood around in Brookline Village and talked to people that were walking by. We did the same in Washington Square. That's one of our favorite things to do, to make sure we hear from a lot of different types of folks. So that was a two-phase effort, as I mentioned. And one important part of our overall approach to the parking system is that we don't just count spaces. We want to develop a parking management approach that supports overall community goals. So as I mentioned, you all have established a lot of things that Brookline wants to do, that the town wants to develop. And so we worked with the community and town staff to develop these goals, which sort of provide the framework for all of our recommendations and really our approach to this study. And those are shown here. So I'm going to quickly take you through some of our findings and then recommendations. So here you have a map of the parking inventory in Brookline. The different types of parking facilities are shown by the regulation, which is denoted by the different colors on the map. And, you know, perhaps surprising to almost anyone who's ever parked in Brookline Village, we counted over 3,000 spaces there. And that is because we counted both what we call publicly available as well as restricted parking. And those generally break down, the regulations generally break down into two major categories, right? You have the 3-hour limit that costs $2, that's kind of in the core area of demand. And then beyond that, free parking with a 2-hour limit, and then various other regulations, of course, interspersed throughout here. Following the inventory, we went out and counted all the cars in all the spaces in May, and we did that throughout the day on 2 weekdays and a weekend, and you're seeing one of the peak times here for Brookline Village. So there's a lot on this slide. The chart on the left-hand side shows occupancy in the dark blue bars and empty spaces in the light gray. The map on the right-hand side is a heat map, so parking street segments and off-street facilities that are shown in orange or red are those that are at or over capacity, and then the cooler colors represent parking locations that have capacity available. And we can also break this down by, you know, almost any way you would like to, many different regulations. We chose these four. The one that I want to draw your eye to is the restricted parking on the top right. So even at peak time, you have, you know, 900 to 1,000 spaces that are just going unutilized in Brookline Village. But you do have, you know, that core that I showed before in gray, core public parking does get quite busy at 9 a.m. and noon in Brookline Village. And that's probably, you know, when someone is driving up to the front door of somewhere and they can't find a space. And so it's that we're looking to decongest and try to use some of that underutilized parking. One important characteristic of Brookline Village is that today town hall staff are parking on the street while the garage is under construction. So we were able to take that into account and look at that core parking, for example, today, and then what that will look like in the future when those town hall staff can go back into the garage and come out of the core and come off the streets where they've been parking today, actually, and they're in some of the publicly available lots as well. I'm not going to talk a ton about public outreach tonight. There's a lot in the report. I wanted to point out, this is one of our favorite questions to ask employees and visitors and residents. Would you be willing to pay a little bit more to park closer? And overall, more visitors generally say, yes, we'd be willing to do that. Or would you rather park a little bit further away to have lower cost or free parking? And overall, more employees are more willing to do that. It's the longer term parkers, of course, that would like to pay less for parking. We took a similar approach to Washington Square. So this is the inventory. And again, we're trying to highlight kind of where the different major regulations are so we can understand if that correlates to demand. In Washington Square, it generally does. The core of demand is kind of that first block of Washington Street south of Beacon, and then, you know, the two sides of Beacon Street on either side of the T station there. And beyond that, parking is fairly underutilized. So, one other thing to mention for Washington is that what was interesting there is instead of a morning midday peak like we saw in Brookline Village, the peak is really in the evening when the restaurants are very active. So we were able to take looks like this, which was to compare some of the space reductions associated with the Washington Street project to the utilization and estimate, you know, if all those cars still parked there tomorrow, what would core parking look like in the future? And you know, the Washington Street project is so long and spread out that you're not actually losing that many spaces in the core. And in Brookline Village, you're also gaining back some spaces with those town hall employees moving out. So overall, the impacts are not that significant in those core areas of demand. So some of the key issues for Brookline Village, and these will be similar for Washington Square, but are that, that core area is very busy, but there's availability outside of the core. Long-term public parking is difficult to find, and then some other findings about regulations and that sort of thing that aren't always clear, which of course impact whether people can find parking. So this is an overview of all of our recommendations. They fall into 4 buckets: generally improving experience, optimizing the existing supply, making sure that parking supports the overall transportation network, and then trying to future-proof the system. There are a few of these that are similar for Washington Square and Brookline Village. So I'm going to talk through Brookline Village fast, talk about the 3 that are very similar, and then follow up with Washington Square at the end. So for Brookline Village, and again, these are just some of our recommendations. There's much more detail in the report, but one of our primary recommendations was kind of a 2-step process of increasing the parking available to the public. And by that, we don't mean necessarily building new parking, but instead taking advantage of some of the parking that's there today. So one important thing that Brookline Village has to offer is the Brookline Place parking garage, which actually is open to the public today. And the town is making moves toward potentially moving some long-term parking in there or otherwise bringing it more into the system, again, in order to decongest that core. Alongside that, there's then an opportunity to make more of the core parking available to shorter term parkers. So when the town hall garage opens up, the Kenton station lot will be able to come back into circulation, incorporating the library garage into the pricing system, and then looking at town hall facilities, particularly at night when they're not being used as heavily, opening those up to the public as well. We also think, although you do have, a priced core and some free parking beyond that, which is great, having that striated parking system, we think there's an opportunity to create some further zones of price differential to better respond to demand. So you could probably charge a bit more to park in that core and then have some zones on the side that are kind of in a middle ground area, and then zones on the very outside that are free. And that will, again, create more options for people and allow people to who are more price sensitive and want to park for longer to perhaps come out of the core. We also took a look at the commercial permit program because you run a lot of commercial permits on street. A bunch of recommendations here. A couple that I want to highlight are moving to more of a monthly and perhaps in the very long term daily option so that people don't feel they have a sunk cost and you all don't feel that you have sold all the permits while people aren't using them. There were several employees and restaurant owners who were kind of like, well, I can't buy into that program because I don't have employees for long enough and that sort of thing. So trying to make that program more flexible. This map is complicated, but we also tried to identify some streets where it might be possible to sell some more permits, as well as consider selling permits for contractor parking. We heard that that was an issue in both study areas. So a few recommendations for both study areas. One, as Commissioner Shute mentioned, is a streamlined wayfinding system. We have some examples here. This one in particular I like from Salem. This provides real-time availability, which is relatively easy these days to do off-street and getting easier even to do on-street, which is pretty exciting. But also creating things like this map, which we were able to do through this study, which is kind of attempting to be a public-friendly way to describe what is truly a very complicated parking system and to make it obvious to folks, where they should park depending on what type of parking they need. So we created one of those for Brookline Village and for Washington Square. Another recommendation is related to this chart in the middle of the slide here, which is trying to say how many different entities need to touch parking. It's a lot, and it's going to be important to designate a parking champion role or otherwise sort of vest that into one person who can then follow up on a lot of different kind of coordination that is needed to manage the parking system. One of those things is potentially activating the existing parking benefit district in Brookline Village and considering one for Washington Square. And then finally, this is my favorite recommendation. You will now have all of the data needed to go out and replicate these counts with relatively little effort. And that's an important thing to be doing as Brookline invests in additional infrastructure and as things change. Keeping these counts up, publishing the results publicly, this data can just be really powerful in terms of how you're managing your system. So for more information, there's a lot more in the report. I'll quickly go over a few for Washington Square and then I'll stop talking, I promise. One of the ones I wanted to highlight for Washington Square is just the loading and unloading activity, and then a similar issue in that folks are hunting for long-term public parking options. We heard a lot about just kind of confusion and underutilization of the existing commercial permits. So again, we have some that are similar, but looking at a demand sensitive pricing structure here that really values those first few blocks right around the Washington Square T stop and responds to what we saw in terms of utilization patterns might help some folks decide, okay, I don't need to park right out front. I'm going to park 1 block away and I'm going to pay a little less to do it. And therefore I'm more willing to do it. We identified some other locations in Washington Square where you could increase parking open to the public. One big one that came up a bunch was the Driscoll School and folks not really being sure if they could park there when school was not in session. So that could be a great option that's right in the core, and folks who own restaurants in the area were pretty excited about that option. Another is to facilitate valet parking. Brookline has a valet parking program. I don't think there's a lot of awareness about this, and some towns have actually moved to what's called a universal valet. So you operate one valet for multiple vendors. You could use that to, draw some of those locations that are further away closer together. And then again, we took a look at the commercial permits and where there might be space to add additional commercial permit parking. So overall, the goal is to spread out the demand within a system that does have capacity and try to manage things in a consistent manner that kind of responds to those overall goals that I talked about at the beginning. So I will stop there and happy to take any questions as needed.
Anyone have questions? Michael?
Sure. Well, thank you for that very thorough presentation, and I look forward to diving into the report as well. I'm wondering, many constituents have spoken about the challenges of either people in our commercial areas dealing with loading and unloading of materials for the businesses and the effect of that on local parking and street traffic more generally, as well as whether it's short-term pickup or double parking for DoorDash and other such businesses. Did your parking analysis deal with any means of addressing those concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't go over it tonight, but we do have, we did a comprehensive inventory of all of the curbside parking, so we understand where there are and are not loading zones or short-term parking zones, and there's a whole wide array of different types of those in both areas. And we found that there really aren't a lot of those right in the heart of either area. And so we would argue that some of those front door spaces might be best utilized for short-term pickup and drop off and or loading. One space can either serve one car sitting there for 2 hours or 8 to 12 deliveries right out front, and that might be a more valuable use of that curb. So we identified some locations in this report, and then we also provided a few follow-up steps if you wanted to do a more sophisticated loading study, the types of questions you might need to ask in order to understand the different patterns and that sort of thing.
And the second question that I had was, did your parking, you talked about long-term parking. I'm assuming that was long-term daytime parking. Did you get any information about the need for long-term overnight parking?
We didn't look too closely at overnight parking. We were mostly looking at kind of business-oriented parking in these studies.
Okay. Thank you.
Amanda?
I have a few questions. One of them is, where did these recommendations lie? And maybe Dan knows this. Like, there are some recommendations that might happen when Washington Street happens, but there's a lot that we can do now. And so whose responsibility does it become to take action on some of these lower hanging fruit?
Sure. Dan Martin, transportation engineer here. So some of these we've already started. So like upgrading the parking meters, trying out new technology. We're going to be piloting a pay-by-plate option in the town hall lot to see if that's more efficient for people. If it works well, we'll expand it town-wide. So parking will be a little more streamlined. we're updating the curb and inventory on GIS. So we'll hopefully have an inventory of all of North Brookline to help us better determine which streets we can expand parking permits on beyond just the commercial area itself, but a little wider of a net. So a lot of these do fall under transportation, but again, some of them, like increasing the parking fines, that involved many different departments, including the select board. So it just depends on the scale of the recommendation and how many departments it touches. And recently too, we just started the new wayfinding project for Coolidge Corner, and that's one of the recommendations in the report as well, and that's a partnership with planning, and got a grant bill for that.
And then along those lines, the second question is, there's some discussion in this report about parking in the Driscoll lot. I know people have thrown out the idea of after-school parking in basically the 3 schools that are near commercial districts, which will be Pierce when it finishes, Driscoll, and Ridley. And I don't know what the steps might be to even make that a feasibility. And I'm looking at Chaz because I don't know if you know the answer to that.
I mean, it's going to be, it would be a discussion with the schools, right? That's really what that is. Ultimately, you know, these are town facilities that the schools use, and so those are discussions that we would have to have with the superintendent and school committee. Yes, it is possible.
And could we bring it up at the town school partnership as
Yes,
a
absolutely.
place to do that?
Yep.
And then my third question was, in the report on Brookline Village, I was taking notes as to some of the concerns about pedestrian accessibility, especially at Harvard and Washington and where they intersect. Mainly because this is my backyard. There's no walk signal on Davis Avenue at Washington Street. Cars do not see pedestrians when they are crossing, especially when taking a right turn. I'm wondering if that particular intersection is something that we can look at before 2030.
We can try and take another look at that one. I don't know, about 5 years ago, we did try and add pedestrian displays and push buttons, and found a lot of the conduit was damaged. We have to do substantial underground repairs to get those push buttons and displays functioning. There was a temporary project possibly to expand the signal or reconstruct it, but we thought that might be too disruptive to rebuild it and then destroy it for the next Washington Street project. But we can look in improvements there.
I mean, even just like, I know it's easier said than done, but for particularly those with limited visibility, not having a pedestrian walk is problematic.
So a question I have related to Amanda's second one, you note on slide 11 that the study's inventory represents the current signage and usage rather than the legal status of ownership of parking spaces. So beyond some of the spaces being in schools, there are also some spaces that are currently privately held. And do you have experience or knowledge of how other communities have tried to partner with private landowners around making those spaces available?
Yeah, there's a whole spectrum of ways that can work. So I think one of the best examples, I believe it's in Lexington, is where they just have a lot that's privately held, but it's fully open and available to the public. And then there's kind of all shades down from there. So you could, the town could facilitate a relationship with one property owner or with a group of employees so that now you only have a limited set of folks who are permitted to park in that lot. And you all have different ways to incentivize doing that, whether that's revenue sharing agreements or offering some in-kind services. You know, you're out there striping your streets and you offer to restripe the lot as well, or maintain. I'm sure Commissioner Shute loves me adding to her list, but I think there's a number of different ways to do it. I would also point you to, I believe it's MAPC. They provide a lot of great resources on shared parking and how to facilitate that. They have some good stuff online, including sample agreements.
What are the usual barriers to entering into those agreements? Liability concerns or something else?
Yep. Yeah, usually it's kind of folks are really worried about liability. People don't want to do the paperwork. And that's why that option of testing out a lower hanging fruit where you have a select group of people that are going to park in the lot, could be a good way to trial it out. But I think providing the data and providing those agreements and kind of trying to smooth some of those barriers right from the get-go can be really effective.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. Very informative.
This is very helpful.
And we will
Great.
now move
Thank you
on
for the
to
opportunity.
You're very welcome. We'll now
Thank
move
you.
to our next agenda item, which is the 16 William Street Pilot Agreement. Question of voting to authorize the Select Board Chair, Town Administrator, and Tax Assessor to execute a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Victory Programs related to 16 William Street. It looks like Kara is going to give us an introduction to this.
Yes, my name is Kara Bruton. I'm the Director of Planning. I want to recognize that Lincoln Heineman, our Finance Director, was critical in getting this pilot draft going. He's not here tonight, as well as our Assessor, Ted Costigan, who I'm hoping is still in the building or maybe joining by Zoom. And also John Buchheit might still be on Zoom from Town Council's office, and Alexander Train might be here online from Victory Programs. It's the end of the evening, so I will try to keep this short. The reason we have a pilot agreement in front of you for Victory Programs regarding 16 William Street is because of the right of first refusal that the town had, and the Select Board assigned that right of first refusal to Victory Programs with a couple of conditions, one of them being that the new property owner continue our kind of standard 25% pilot payment for this charitable use property. And Victory Programs is willing to do that. The draft that you have to sign tonight is very similar to what was provided in the packets, except for a couple of things. One, there is actually an attached Exhibit A, which describes the property. And secondly, thanks to one of you Select Board members, on page 2, paragraph 3, because this agreement is for 20 fiscal years, we count fiscal year 2027 as year 1. And so in the signed version, there are edits so that it says, now it says in extending through fiscal year 2046. There's a second edit that our tax assessor caught in the middle of that discussion, and that is a couple of sentences down, where it says prior to termination, Victory Programs may elect to renew instead of elect to renewal, which just doesn't make sense from a language perspective. I'm happy to answer any questions. 20 years is kind of the typical term for our charitable organizations, according to John Buchheit. This agreement does not ramp up like some of our older pilot agreements do from 0% up to 25%. We just start at 25%. The agreement anticipates renewal at the end of the 20 years, and of course with all of these kinds of things, the pilot payments, the pilot agreement is voluntary, but we expect Victory Programs to continue to work with us, and it's extremely important as we try to reach out to all of our charitable organizations and treat them all fairly, that even for these small properties, we're trying to treat everybody to come to the table and offer a pilot agreement with us.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Michael?
Thank you very much. I just want to confirm that the calculation of the 25% is based on the assessed value of the property, and that the property is reassessed according to some regular schedule, so that the 25% is of a at least changing number over the course of the agreement.
Yes, that is correct.
Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. I move that we authorize the Select Board Chair, Town Administrator, Tax Assessor to execute a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Victory Programs related to 16 William Street. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
And with that, we will now move to our final item of the evening, warrant article vetting, review and possible vote on invitation to vet potential warrant articles in advance of filing. I know this is something Michael's been working a lot on, if you'd like to, or Chaz.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So we've, Michael and I traded drafts back and forth. What you have in the packet is a red line of the proposed final version. We can get you a clean copy. I think it's reasonably clear. Michael made edits to my edits. So the red line version that you see there is the version we'd like to send out to town meeting members. The long and the short of it is, it's an invitation for folks to, if they have a warrant article they would like to propose, to submit a draft in advance so that we can identify how it fits into all the other plans that are out there. Look into whether the aims of the article can be accomplished in other ways, more efficient ways, and then estimate the amount of time and money it would take to prepare that article for town meetings consideration, and then implement it once passed. So it's basically a pre-review prior to filing that allows folks to get a sense of, what the impact of their article is, how it furthers the goals that have been laid out by the community. And hopefully, if there's a better or easier way to do it, we can work together with that person or those people to make that happen. So it's an open invitation. It fulfills the goals of your roadmap in terms of bringing the process out more to the people, being transparent and clear. I'm happy with the language of it that Michael's put together, if the rest of the board is.
Bernard?
Yeah, I think it's great, great language. We tried to do this a few years ago, and we never got anywhere. But I'm wondering whether we have any sense of how town meeting members are going to respond to this. It's not guaranteed that they see the wisdom of.
Well, I mean, what we try and really emphasize in this, that it's not gatekeeping. It's not, you can't file a warrant article if you don't do this. Listen, you get 10 signatures, you can file whatever you want. That's the way it works. But this is trying to be helpful to them. There's a long process that any warrant article goes through. There's a lot of hearings. There's a lot of back and forth. And giving the folks in charge of implementing the law a chance to look at it well in advance to figure out how it fits into the broader scheme and whether there are ways, whenever someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm thinking of filing a warrant article, I try and go back to the very basic principles and say, what problem are you trying to solve? Is there an issue out there? Is there something that the government is not doing for you that you would like it to be doing? Or is there something the government is currently doing that you would like it to stop doing? How can we be of help to you? Because sometimes, yes, the right way to do that is to file a warrant article and make sure that gets out there. And sometimes there are changes in policy that can just make it happen faster and more effectively. And so it's really in that, I would hope that especially based on the language that Michael has put together here, that folks take it as an open invitation to be collaborative and for us to provide help, as opposed to saying, we're going to look at your warrant article and figure out if we like it or not. That's not the point of this. It's not about liking. It's about, figuring out how it fits into the established community priorities and figuring out if there's a better way to do it, what that looks like.
I guess I would also add that it's my hope that in addition to the population of town meeting members and others in the community who are relatively familiar with this process and have worked the system relatively regularly and consistently, that this will also provide an opportunity for broader outreach and bringing other people who, as the town administrator said, may have ideas about how they want to improve the way that government functions or to stop government from doing things that they don't like, to be able to engage in these conversations. I don't just want to say conversations, but also to help structure their thinking in order to make most effective use of the legislative process time that is, a lot of work for petitioners and a lot of work for town meeting and the boards.
I will just say, from the folks I've talked to that have brought warrant articles before, the idea of getting feedback before the gate is closed on making edits within scope is appealing. And so hopefully, to your point, for those who have gone through this before and have run into problems with what the moderator deems in scope, this becomes an appealing path. The other thing that I would say, and I don't know that we can demand it, but I would like to encourage town boards as much as possible to do joint hearings on some of these, so that it's not 20 hearings that petitioners have to go through. And if we can streamline any of that, or encourage them to streamline it, I think it would be helpful.
We can send a message to boards and committees if you would like us to do that. We have the list, and we can just say to all the chairs, the select board strongly encourages you, if you're interested in holding a hearing on a particular warrant article, to let us know so that we can basically put a list together. Here are all the boards and committees that want to be heard on this, or have a hearing on this, and then we can talk about cross-coordinating that.
Yeah, I like that. I don't want to speak for anyone else.
I agree. That could be helpful in reducing the number of meetings that petitioners have to attend, and thematically, it can be useful to actually hear from more than one board at the same time. I remember during my time on school committee, there were a greater number of joint select board school committee meetings. We haven't had those in ages. Part of that is because we don't have as many school construction projects, but there were other times we had joint meetings, and I found them to be useful. Also, I want to add that to me, what's most attractive about this opportunity, beyond what Amanda stated about scope, is also oftentimes petitioners will be frustrated that a certain technicality or legal issue renders their warrant article sort of dead on arrival, and had they known that prior to the filing deadline, they would have constructed it in a different way, and that actually increases the ability for the change that is desired to be effectuated to occur more quickly.
It's my hope, and I'm looking to your collective counsel on this also, that in addition to just publishing this to the TMMA listserv, that we also try to broadcast this either through various social media sites that many people in the town congregate on, or town-owned channels of communication.
We can talk with the communications, with Christina and the communications folks about how we get that out in terms of social media. I think it is generally a wise policy from my perspective, right? Individual town employees don't post in an official capacity on social media sites, on message boards and so forth, because that creates an expectation of response. So, for example, I don't think, departments will occasionally post events on, the Facebook Brookline Townwide discussion page, but individual department members do not in an official capacity. So we can think about how we message that out.
All right, well, I'm very pleased. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but with that said, obviously individual select board members are always free to message that out, and that might actually be a better way. But again, it's all about the creation of expectations. Are we overreactive on social media? So we try to strike that balance.
All right, well, I'm very pleased with how this is written, so thank you very much for that, Michael and Chaz, for your back and forth in making this happen. And I would like to move that we vote to approve this language to invite the vetting of potential warrant articles in advance of filing. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. And
Can I ask a question? Now, the definition of vetting, that's more, it sounds like we're talking about approving the warrant article, and that's not really the point that we're making here. It's more, I should have thought of this earlier, we're saying, here's an opportunity to get information as well as help from the select board and town staff. I mean, I think vetting is a word that people may react to.
First of all, thank you, and I agree with you. The second thing to say is that in my last set of edits, I actually removed the language about this being a process of vetting and referred specifically to the public vetting process leading up to town meeting, which is obviously after filing. So in the language of the letter, I removed the notion that this was a process of vetting in any sense.
I guess maybe I'm reading this out of context, but in the second paragraph, second to the last line, it says, following process can help. The warrant articles are ready to face the public. Okay, maybe I misread that.
But to your point, the way this is titled in the packet is
Yes.
Yes, the way
Right, that's
it's
right.
vetting invitation.
Right.
Okay.
That's no longer what it is. Or I mean, if it ever was, I think that's inaccurate language on our part when we put the agenda together. But the actual document does not say vetting. This is a vetting opportunity.
So maybe we can come up with a better title when we
Yes,
circulate
when you
it.
disseminate it to town meeting members, yes.
Yes.
I assume Michael, if it's okay, that Michael can send it to TMMA, and we just won't use that term.
Right.
All right, so that concludes the agenda items for this evening. Is there anyone who would like to be heard in public comment? No one. So that concludes our meeting for this evening. Thank you very much.